For any business out there, there's this one thing that's the ultimate test. It's kind of funny. It's both the single biggest opportunity you'll ever have for huge growth and, at the very same time, the number one threat to your survival. What are we talking about? Free market competition.
So let me ask you, what is the ultimate test of a business strategy? You might think it's about having the absolute best product, or maybe the smartest team on the block. And look, those things definitely help, no question. But the real trial by fire, that's something else entirely, something much, much bigger.
It all comes down to this: competing in a free market. Okay, so let's really dive into this. For this whole explainer, I'm going to put on two different hats. Sometimes I'll be the professor, breaking down the theory, and other times I'll be the consultant, showing you how to actually win in the real world. First things first, let's talk about the rules of the game. Because you see, before you can even think about winning, you've got to understand the basic mechanics of the market you're about to jump into. What's so cool about this is how competition just naturally makes things better for all of us, the customers. Think about it. First, you get efficiency. Companies have to cut waste. They have to be smarter just to keep their prices down. Then you've got innovation. They're all scrambling to create better stuff to get your attention. And what does all that lead to? Well, it leads to consumer sovereignty, which is just a fancy way of saying that you're in charge. You, the customer, get to decide who wins and who loses every single time you pull out your wallet. All right, time to switch hats. Professor hat comes off, consultant hat goes on. We just covered the what of competition. Now, let's get into the how. How do you actually win this game? For that, we've got to turn to an absolute legend of strategy, Michael Porter. Porter's big idea is actually pretty simple, but it is so profound. Winning isn't about being just a little bit better at doing the same thing everyone else is doing. No way. It's about making a choice to be fundamentally different. That's the whole ballgame. You need a strategy that's uniquely yours. Okay, so the first way you can win is through what's called cost leadership. This is the Walmart playbook, right? The goal here isn't to be the fanciest or the most cutting edge. It's to be the absolute, undisputed, lowest cost producer in your industry. That's what lets you win on price and still keep your profit margins healthy. The second strategy, differentiation. This is all about making your products special, unique in a way that people really value, so much so that they're willing to pay more for it. I mean, think about Apple's sleek design or that iconic brand power of Coca-Cola. They are not playing the price game. They're competing on being one of a kind. And the third way to win is focus. You'll also hear this called a niche strategy. So instead of trying to be everything to everyone, you pick a very specific, maybe even overlooked corner of the market. And your goal? To become the undisputed king of that small pond. So let's just put this all together real quick. This chart lays out the trade-offs perfectly. Cost leadership, you're going after a broad market, and your goal is pure efficiency. Differentiation, also a broad market, but your goal is to be unique. And focus, you're aiming for a narrow slice of the market, where your goal is to be the expert. The key is, you really have to pick one. Okay, so let's say you've picked your strategy. You're ready to go. But here's the thing. Winning isn't just about what you do. It's about understanding the entire competitive environment, the battlefield itself. Because trust me, a great strategy in a terrible market is still going to fail. And this is where Porter's famous 5 forces come into play. These are the 5 big external pressures that really decide just how profitable an industry can even be. See, it's not just about your direct rivals. You've got to worry about new companies popping up, suppliers with too much power, customers who can drive a hard bargain, and, of course, totally different products that could replace yours. Let's just zoom in on one of those forces to see how it works: the threat of new entrants. If you're lucky enough to be in an industry with high barriers to entry, I'm talking about things like patents or needing a ton of money for factories, you're pretty well protected. But if those barriers are low, well, you better be constantly looking over your shoulder for the next scrappy startup. All right, let's switch back to the professor hat for a minute. The consultant, is focused on winning today's game. But the professor knows that the game itself is constantly changing, all thanks to one powerful, unstoppable force. And that force has a name: creative destruction. The economist Joseph Schumpeter came up with this, and it's the idea that in a free market, new innovations are always destroying old, outdated ways of doing things. Yeah, it's messy, it can be super disruptive, but it's the engine that drives all economic progress. And this is the perfect example, right? I mean, Blockbuster, remember them?
They had an amazing business model for a while, and then poof, it was gone. See, streaming services like Netflix didn't just compete with them. Nope. They made the entire idea of a DVD rent-a-store completely obsolete. That, right there, is creative destruction in action. It's brutal, but it's powerful.
So here's the big takeaway for any business leader out there. Your success is temporary. Your competitive advantage, whatever it is, has a half-life. It's always decaying. The lesson? You have to innovate and adapt before the market forces you to. Now, all this talk of battlefields and destruction, it can sound pretty tough for individual companies, and believe me, it is. But if we kind of zoom out and look at the big picture, we see that for the economy, for society as a whole, this intense competition is actually an incredibly good thing. It's this constant pressure that gives us lower prices because firms are fighting for our dollars. It gives us higher quality products and services as they innovate to try and stand out. And maybe most importantly, it makes sure that our society's resources, like money and talent, flow to the companies that are doing the best job, which maximizes what our whole economy can produce. So, how do you survive, let alone thrive, in an environment like this? It really takes a dual mindset. You need that tactical consultant mindset, figuring out how to win the sale today. But at the same time, you need the strategic professor mindset, always thinking about how to protect your business for tomorrow through things like innovation and building a strong brand. And that brings us to one last really powerful idea. So many people are afraid of competition, but the truly great companies, they do the exact opposite. They embrace it. They look at fierce competition not as a threat, but as proof, as a clear signal that they're in a healthy, dynamic market where there's real opportunity to be had. So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. As you look at your own industry, or even just your career, which of these forces we talked about is changing your world the most right now? Is it new players? Is it some new technology? Or is it the growing power of your customers? Figuring that out? Well, that's the first step to building your own winning strategy.